Become aware of the surrounding sounds. Become aware of the sounds on the road. Become aware of the sounds in this room. Notice subtle sounds. Become aware of your body. Become aware of the sensations in the body. Become aware of the leg. Become aware of the right leg. Become aware of the left leg. Become aware of left hand. Become aware of right hand. Become aware of the chest. Become aware of the face. Become aware of your back. Gently rest your awareness at the top of your head, Sahasrara. Feel the vibration there, energy there. Sit with the awareness that I am not the body, mind or intellect. I am pure consciousness. I am the witness of the body, mind and intellect. असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
ओम शांति शांति शांति।
Slowly open your eyes. My pranams to all Atma Jyotis, divine light of the self. Today we are in the concluding slokas of Ishavasya Upanishad. The concluding slokas are about the prayer. The beginning sloka of Ishavasya Upanishad I have explained. What is the beginning sloka? Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. The Ishavasya Upanishad starts with the perfection in existence and perfection in me. Okay? Ishavasya Upanishad concludes with a prayer. So we are coming to that part of the Ishavasya Upanishad, which is a prayer. So here there are last two slokas are there. Vidyam cha avidyam cha यस्तद् वेदो उभयं सह अविद्यया मृत्युं तीर्त्वा विद्यया अमृतमुष्णते अन्धतमं प्रविशन्ति ये असम्भूतिम् उपासते ततो भूय इवते तमो सम्भूत्यां रतः अन्य देवाहु संभवात् अन्यदाहु असंभवात् इति शुश्रुमः धीराणां ये नस्तद् विचक्षिरे संभूतिं च विनाशं च यस्तद् वेदो उभयं सह विनाशेन मृत्युं तीर्त्वा संभूत्या अमृतमश्नुते. So here the nature, there is a duality in nature. There is darkness, there is light, there is good and evil, there is a positive and negative, there is a masculine and there is feminine. The nature of existence is duality, Dvaita, duality. The people who are confounded by this duality, bewildered by duality, they want to move on spiritual path. They are confounded. They are actually come across another type of duality. This duality is vidya and avidya. Avidya means ignorance. Ignorance of the self, and vidya means wisdom, the knowledge of the self. Even there is a duality. Ignorance and knowledge. Is this duality useful? Is this duality required? The Rishi of the Ishavasya Upanishad says there is a role for this duality. Vidya is the knowledge of the self, avidya is the ignorance of the self. In the ignorance of self, we do lot of activities, what you call kamya karma, desire-oriented activities. Okay, which brings the fruits of action, karma phala, and lead you to more and more bondage. Whereas the vidya, the knowledge of the self, leads you to progressive freedom. How does it lead to freedom? By a constant discrimination of what I am and what I am not. The self and non-self. This is called viveka. What is the way to enlightenment? What is the path to enlightenment? Not definitely Himalayas, not definitely some ashrams, not definitely a forest. The viveka is the path to enlightenment. Viveka is the ability to distinguish what is self, what is not self. In other words, ability to understand what I am and what I am not. I am not a body, mind or intellect, but I am pure awareness. This distinction leads to mukti. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you struggle for path of enlightenment, unless this discrimination dawns, this viveka dawns in you, there is no possibility of mukti. Then of course, there is a detachment, vairagya, not getting attached to the body, mind and intellect complex. Vairagya is not definitely about the society. Vairagya is not definitely about wife or husband. Vairagya is the detachment from your body, mind complex. Everything else is secondary. So, vidya means the knowledge of the self, which involves viveka and vairagya. Avidya means ignorance of the self, where we mistake ourselves for a body, mind and intellect. And this leads to a lot of erroneous actions. One error leads to other error. So why is this required? What is the role of this vidya and avidya? Is it required? The answer is yes. A coconut has a shell, a very hard shell, and soft kernel inside. Why that hard shell is there? Is it required? Ultimately, what is valuable in the coconut is the inner core, which is soft, which is the real coconut. There is a protective sheath there. Why this is required? This protective sheath protects that inner soft core until a point of time when the coconut sprouts. It becomes a plant and it becomes a tree. So till that point of time, there is an outer shell provides a protection. Similarly, ignorance or ego for us is like a shell. A person needs to develop some amount of a healthy ego for survival in life. A person with a negative ego, feeling inferior, cannot survive in life. A person with bloated ego will get hurt in life. A good amount of, decent amount of healthy ego is necessary for surviving and growth in life. This ego is what I call as avidya, ignorance. So, unless you are able to survive and grow and fulfill some of your desires, which are born out of vasanas, there is restlessness. So this ego provides a sort of shell, a protection for that to happen. Avidya has a role to play. Avidya has a role to play in interacting with the world, in being in the world, in fulfilling your desires. It has a role to play. It has a role to play in enlightenment also, mukti also. From avidya, you will explore the world of death. You understand everything in the world is temporary. Impermanence you understand. What do you do? I want to fulfill certain desire. I go and acquire that. I struggle for that. be it position, power, money, family, children, whatever is that. Ego helps in that. Beyond a certain point of time, you start understanding the nature, inherent nature of what you have acquired. Inherently, everything in every position in the world is temporary. And the temporariness you start realizing. The temporariness is called Martyaloka, or world of death. So, ego is required, avidya is required for you to explore the world of death, world of impermanence. And this is a process, a part of vairagya, detachment. You start getting detached from the impermanent. Then you will understand the self, viveka. This is not self, this is not body, mind, mind and intellect is not self. Initially you thought everything is self. What all we have not thought of self? We are very proud to be born in such a community. We are very proud to be born in such a country. We are very proud to be born with such a color. So we associate many things which are non-self to be self. As the vairagya dawns, avidya helps you to explore the world of ignorance, the world of death, the world of impermanence. And from there you start developing viveka, discrimination. What I am not. I am not a body, I am not a mind, I am not a intellect. This understanding dawns. So both avidya and vidya are part of life. Right? So avidya helps us to understand the nature of mortal world, the nature of impermanent world. The more you interact, the more you come to know the impermanence of the world. Vidya helps you to understand what is the permanent world, what is the eternal abode. So vidya helps you to move towards the eternity. Avidya helps you to understand and overcome the temporary. So these are two parts of the two faces of the same coin. Both are required. Only partial knowledge is not sufficient. Somebody understands that the world is impermanent. He becomes very restless. Everything in the world is impermanent. Vairagya, Are Baba, he will become restless. He will lose his peace. That's understanding half the truth. Somebody doesn't understand this half the truth. Somebody says Atma alone is permanent, eternal. But he has not understand the impermanence of the world. So then what will happen? He gets stuck in between. Neither here nor there. This is what we call as Trishanku, in between stage. So both understanding is required, Viveka and Vairagya. Without that, the understanding and realization is incomplete. Then, with avidya, with ignorance, you will conquer the world of death, conquer the world of mrityu. And with vidya, you will attain the immortality and go beyond vidya and avidya. Self-realization means holding on to vidya, atmadnana. Self-realization is going beyond vidya and avidya. Vidya and avidya are means to explore the existence. Avidya is means to explore the world. Vidya is the means to explore the self. When both exploration are complete, then what will you realize? You realize that the world is temporary, the body, mind and intellect is temporary. The body, mind, intellect and the world are a part of one whole. The body is not separate from the world. The body, mind and intellect is a part of the whole, one whole. And you have developed objective awareness, which is witness consciousness of body, mind and intellect and the world, and become free from body, mind and intellect and the world, and you attain the world of immortality. So Vidya and avidya, both have to be transcended finally. Okay. Then there is another duality which comes into picture. For transcending the duality, what is the way? How do I transcend the duality? Sambhuti and asambhuti, manifest and unmanifest. For us, our mind requires a conceptualization of enlightenment, liberation. So we follow the path of worship of the manifest divinity. It can be in the form of Rama, Krishna, Paramahamsa, or an enlightened being. We worship the divine beings. We worship the avatar Purushas. We worship God in the form. It can be a human form, or it can be form of existence, universe. Form. Then there are people say, no, formless is the reality. So don't get into form. Formless is the reality. And to some extent, very extreme they go. They destroy all forms as unreality. Stuck with the worship the formless. So there is a duality here, form and the formless. The worst people who worship the form are called bhaktas. The people who worship the formless are called the danis, supposed to be. So are these duality required? Is this required? Form and formless. Even this duality has a value in the spiritual life. All magnificent temples, culture, dance, music have come from bhaktas. Bhakta is love personified, devotion personified. He sees or she sees the divinity manifest everywhere. The existence becomes a play of divine. But there is a possibility that he may get stuck to form. The mind can conceptualize divinity in such a form which excludes the multifaceted aspect of divinity, and he may get stuck. She may get stuck. On the other hand, though, those who pursue what we call as formless reality, they discard the world of manifestation as something meaningless, useless, and constantly think of the unformless reality. Now Sri Krishna Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita 12th chapter says that those who pursue the asambhuti, here it says non-manifest, their path is difficult. Not for everybody, for people who pursue that path. Because mind of all common human beings requires something to grip on, something to hold on. Okay? Otherwise mind gets tensed up. The mind starts worrying. So, for worship of the form is much more easier. The devotion is much more easier. Actually, their world is full of devotees. Because devotion is easier. There is a conceptualization is there. Then there is non-conceptualization or formless reality which is difficult for the human mind. But the form and the formless are two aspects of the same reality. Those who pursue the form, they both have certain phala or result. When you pursue the form, divine form, when you worship the divine form, you develop certain divine qualities depending on which divine being you worship. Right? So when you worship Rama, in reality you are worshipping the dharma, the natural law. So you start tuning yourself to the natural law. When you worship Shiva, you start development of what he calls vairagya, detachment. So what you worship, those qualities manifest in you. In effect, what will happen? There is a purification of the mind. There is a chitta shuddhi. Right? So that's where those who are in the pursuit of enlightenment or mukti, they get attracted by enlightened beings. They start worshipping Guru, a realized being. There are other people get anxious. How can you worship a human being? I am worshipping such and such a form of God. Now this person who is in the pursuit of enlightenment says, Guru is my God. These people can't, the people who are worshipping some other divine being, they have a magnificent idea of divine being, and somebody is worshipping Guru, an ordinary human being. So there is a confusion. What they don't understand is what this person is worshipping is the state of enlightenment through the form of Guru. The state of consciousness which Guru has, that is being worshipped. And in the process, there is a quality of that pure consciousness develops in the mind. That's why our Dasas, Purandara Dasa Sahitya says, Guruvina Gulama Nagadata Tanaka Dwarayadanda Mukti. Until you become the servant of the master, you cannot get mukti. Then the question will come, God will give me mukti, why should I become a servant of master? What is missed out here is when you are worshipping the Guru, you are really getting attracted to his consciousness. The more you understand the consciousness, the more purification happens in you. When you appreciate and when you worship a divine being, whether it's Rama or Krishna, those divine qualities manifest in you. So there is a purification happens. So Saguna Upasana or worship of the form has a value in our spiritual life. It brings the qualities of what we worship in our life. The more you worship Rama, the quality of Rama comes into your life. The more you worship Shiva, the quality of Shiva comes into your life. The more you worship Guru, the wisdom and enlightenment of Guru comes in your life. This is the principle. What we get attracted, that comes more and more in our life. Now there is an inherent danger. The person who is doing Saguna Upasana may get stuck to the form, not to the quality. A person who is worshipping the Guru may get stuck to the form of the Guru, not the quality of the Guru, not the consciousness of the Guru. That's where the bondage happens. Saguna Upasana leads to purification of the mind. Then what happens to Nirguna Upasana? Nirguna Upasana or Jnana, Saguna Upasana is called Bhakti, Nirguna Upasana is called Jnana. It leads to total detachment from all the objects, including body, mind and intellect. From Saguna Upasana, you will come out, you will conquer the world of death. From Nirguna Upasana, you will attain the immortal self. And you have to really go beyond both Saguna and Nirguna. You have to understand both Saguna and Nirguna are aspects of the same reality. Like water, ocean and wave, they are not different. Water itself has manifested ocean, ocean itself has manifested as wave. So water represents Parabrahma or Supreme Reality, ocean represents Lord, and wave represents individual soul. They are different aspects of the same reality. So once you develop this perspective of the totality, you will become free from the partiality. That partiality is called duality, Dvaita, and you develop the understanding of the totality, it's called Advaita. You become free from that. From partiality to impartiality. From personal to impersonal. This is the spiritual journey. So what we see as duality in the spiritual path also, worship of the form, worship of the formless, Vidya and Avidya, they are in reality help us to evolve and go beyond both these. So there is a danger, he says, if you worship only Vidya or only Avidya, only manifest or only unmanifest, then there is a danger that you may fall because of the reason which I told you earlier.
If someone does Saguna Upasana with the intent of premeditated intent of getting of quality, will that work or?
Yeah, it will.
It will work. But then there's ego and selfishness in it.
Yeah, Saguna Upasana is always ego. The ego, when you do Saguna Upasana, please understand, in Bhakti, there is a duality. I am there and God is there, I am separate from God, that concept is always there in Bhakti. That's why the people who do Bhakti or devotion, they will never think that they can be equal to God, they can be one with the God. That is something actually what we call as apachara. They say, oh, you can't say like that. Right? How can I be one with God? How can I be equal to God? They will say. There is a concept of separation. Okay? And Bhakta many times prays that Bhagavan, give me an opportunity to be with you all life. Give me millions of births and every birth I become your Bhakta. So then Bhaktas also have another way of saying, I always want to enjoy sugar, but I never want to become sugar. Okay, this is their objection to the non-duality. In duality, there is a love, there is a joy, there is a celebration, because God is there and I am there. I have a good company, right? The company which lasts many lifetimes or millions of lifetimes. It's good enough for me. Okay. But what happens in this process is, in the bhakti there is ego, no doubt about that. That ego becomes from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic, purification happens. You see, go to this thing, what is that, temple, whole massive temples are constructed, beautiful temples are constructed. There's a dance, there's bhajan, there's a song, there's a feast, always this festivity. Do you think it's coming out of sattvic nature? It's an avenue for rajasic nature to purify. Okay? It happens. And just because somebody says I am Gnani doesn't mean that ego is not there. It's also there. I am Gnani, ego is there. Okay? So, now you have to come out of both these egos, Bhakta ego and Gnani ego, to get mukti. Sorry? Keeping the one who keeps quiet should disappear. That is the way. Okay? Keeping quiet also means there is somebody who is action. So the one who acts should disappear. Nothing to do. A person, Gnani, can be talkative. Gnani can dance. But still there will be no dancer or talker. Whereas a Adnani may be sitting in silence, but there will be chattering, noisy talker going on inside. So the solution is, sitting in silence, you may be still talkative. Talking may be in silence. The one who talks or one who is silent should disappear. That is mukti. Sorry? Life you cannot simplify in that one equation. See, the one who is talking, the solution may be that you stop talking. Okay? But then what happens is mental chatter will increase. Noise will increase. Right? The question is, any unconscious action will lead you to consciousness? Any blind fellow, how many blind fellows can lead to light? Unconscious actions, can it lead to consciousness? It has to be awareness, it has to be consciousness. Jnana is required. No mechanical solution is there in life. Now we will come to the last two slokas, which are everything is a leela. Yeah. Right. Sorry.
Everything is leela and everybody are actors.
Huh. I didn't get what is
If we
it.
are supposed to talk, we will talk. If we are not supposed to talk, we will not talk. We take everything as it comes and because everything is clear.
So, what is the question?
The question is why should we bother about silence or even enlightenment?
This whole teaching is for those who are bothered about it. If you are not bothered about it, you don't need about teaching. Right? That's why it is said. The question is, if everything is Leela, why silence, why meditation, why Jnana, why yoga, why be what it is? Okay, to be like that is not easy. It is very tough. It's like being like a child.
What we say to be constantly in the state of bliss and not has to be stopped.
I'm not saying tough or easy. I'm saying for people, it is not simple. Okay? People are seeking a solution. Right? There is a misery in life of people. There is a suffering. Now the whole of spiritual teaching is people who are suffering in some way. Those who have gone beyond suffering, there is no teaching. Not required. A person has no disease, there is no medicine. This Upanishad and Veda, all are medicines, like medicines. If you don't have a disease, there is no medicine, not required.
Understanding it has to become viveka.
Yeah.
It has gone upon.
See, what you said is right. That's why it is said that for a person who gets enlightened Gnani, Vedas become Aveda. It's no longer required. When you go to a city, you need a map. And very serious about the map, protecting, you are very careful about the map, where you have to go. But you reach the destination, the map becomes irrelevant. For a Gnani, these Vedas, Upanishads are not required. Okay? He may teach them, he may talk about them for the benefit of others. For himself it is not required. Similarly, any spiritual teaching is not required for a person who is not suffering. Okay? In the sense, there are people who are suffering intensely, but they don't know they are suffering. That's a different category. So Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says about a dog, right? Dog chews a bone, and the blood starts coming out of the bone, the teeth. So dog enjoys that blood, thinking that the blood is coming from the bone. In reality, it is coming from its own teeth. So there are people in the world who are suffering, but they don't know they are suffering. Okay? For them, there is no solution. Then there are people in the world who are suffering and they know that they are suffering, but they don't know the solution. For them also, nothing will work.
What is the difference between a person who is completely not alive, like a dog, and a person who is completely alive?
Yeah,
What is the difference?
I'll tell you. So the third category of people is they know that there is suffering. They are suffering. They know that there is a way out of suffering and possibly a path for that. This is very beautifully summarized by Buddha. What Buddha says, first principle of Buddha is teaching life is a suffering. Dukkhamayam. Okay? So then he next immediate statement, like Newton's laws, no? He says, first law is life is suffering. Okay? Then he says, there is a way out of suffering. Provided you know the cause of suffering. By following the path of noble path, you can come out of suffering. This is the four statements of Buddha. So the spiritual teaching don't apply or not useful to people who are suffering but they don't know they are suffering. The spiritual teachings are not applicable to people who know that they are suffering but believe that nothing in the world can save them. It can only help people who understand their suffering and who understand there is a way out of suffering and there is hope. For them only it helps. And spiritual teachings don't help those who are realized also. Nothing is there for them to help. What is there? For a Gnani, what spiritual teaching is required? Okay? So this is the life. Now what was your question? Huh. Right.
The person who is Gnani is beyond all that.
So what is the difference between a Adnani, ignorant person who is suffering without knowing suffering, without knowing what he is doing, and a Gnani who has come out or who has become wise? The difference is between the darkness and light. Adnani lives in suffering, not only causes suffering for himself, he causes suffering all around. In fact, people suffer more because of, it's actually suffering of that person is okay. Everybody else around him suffers. Sometimes they create so much of chaos in the world, they cause suffering to all beings. Okay? So you have heard of this sloka, Bhubharottharanaya. Sri Krishna has come to the earth for making the earth lighter. Bhubhara. Right? Heavy weight. What happens is, please understand, those who are ignorant and ego, they are weight for the earth. Which is actually bulk of the population. Okay, some are heavyweights, some are lightweights. Okay, but it's a weight. So now, this weight, sorry? Yes. So now the ego consciousness causes misery for all around, thinking that he is enjoying or she is enjoying. Okay, so this is the state of Adnani, right? Okay, and the state of Gnani is he has come out of the suffering. Okay, there is no more suffering exists for him. Pain may exist. Gnani can feel a pain if you put a needle through his hand, or like Jesus was crucified, right? He went through intense pain. But there was no suffering in the mind of Jesus. Alright? Jesus was crucified for no reason, no fault. Anybody in that position would have been cursing all the people around. You have come for tamasha, you have crucified an innocent man, right? And he may be cursing God also. But Jesus, there is suffering actually. The pain is added with the suffering. And Jesus said, forgive them. They know not what they are doing. Just mind is pure. Mind is empty. Right? So Adnani has no suffering. Because he has no suffering, he is a blessing on the earth. Okay? Adnani is a weight on the earth. Adnani brings peace and joy all around. Adnani brings misery all around. Adnani brings a evolution on the earth. Adnani brings a devolution on the earth. There's a hell lot of difference between them.
If we worship the Sadguru, we are actually worshipping the enlightened state, and that same state of consciousness will start developing itself.
Right.
Now there are many gods also in
Right.
state that they are.
Right.
So if somebody worships such a Sadguru, such a Guru, with complete sincerity and devotion, then what happens?
So the question is, when you worship a Sadguru, a Gnani, enlightened being, you will start developing a purified consciousness. This is the principle. That's what is said, right? Dhyana moolam guror murti, puja moolam guror padam, mantra moolam guror vakyam, moksha moolam guru krapa. The path of mukti starts from becoming aware of an enlightened being, becoming aware of an enlightened state. That is the only way. Okay. There is a very beautiful mantra in Jainism. That's called Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam. It like goes. Okay. And this mantra, they say it is a small mantra, very beautiful. Whenever I listen to the mantra, I cry. Namo Siddhanam, Namo Arihantanam. Arihanta means enlightened one. Namo Siddhanam means those who are on the path of liberation. Like that, it specifies the people who are on the path of liberation or liberated. And the mantra says, this is the most auspicious and purifying mantra. Whatever we think, we become that. Okay? Now, the challenge comes here. There is a genuine Sadguru and there is a false Sadguru. Now, let us say there are two categories of people, genuine and false. In today's world, people don't have spiritual education. Okay? A person without a spiritual education is like an illiterate person living in a city. Very difficult. The other day, one of my driver told a story, incident. A person who is a cook in Mysore hotel, he is a cook or he is a server in the Mysore hotel. He came to Bangalore hoping to earn a larger money in a 5-star hotel. In Mysore he gets paid some few thousand rupees. He hoped that in a 5-star hotel he is able to earn. He has been serving people in the Mysore hotel for 10 years. And he came to interview. The first question he is asked is, can you speak English and understand English? The person said, no. Then you cannot survive one day in this hotel because all our clients speak English. Right? This person had to go back to Mysore. An illiterate person has no chance of survival in the modern day world. Very difficult. He is pushed into a lower end job and existence. That's the nature. How do you think that a spiritually illiterate person be able to come up in life in a spiritual world, in spirituality? Very difficult. Because he may not be able to understand what is genuine, what is bogus. Many of the people who get attracted to spiritual path or path of Guru or anything, because of many magics, miracles, fantastic things which are told about them. Okay? The spirituality is something more than this fantasy, magic and miracles. The bulk of the population gets attracted to that. And once they get attracted, sooner or later there is a possibility that the disillusionment happens. But please understand, they didn't come for mukti. They came for some benefit. They came for some miracle. They worshipped a Sadguru, so at least Sadguru who may do or may not do miracles, not for the purpose of mukti, but for the purpose of some benefit. So in such case, they will get what they want, or they will not get what they want. In both the cases, the benefits are limited. But when I say worshipping a Sadguru is for a purpose of mukti or liberation, not for any external conditioning, not for benefit, not for gratification. Sooner or later, he will find a real Sadguru. The law of nature is what you crave for, what you seek, the nature will take you there. If he has come across a fake Sadguru, sooner or later, he will come to know this is fake and he will start looking for a genuine. But that won't happen in case of a person who has come for not mukti but for benefits. It is like this. There were two people who were in search of wealth. Somebody told them there is in a distant forest, distant mountain, there is some wealth. These people went in search of that. There is a sparkling light somewhere, both are seeing. One person is seeing sparkling light in one mountain, other person sees a sparkling light in another mountain. Then they take a deviation. He will search in this direction, other person will search in other direction. One place the light appears to be very bright and big, and other place light is small but sparkling. The person who went into such a bright light found that it's a forest fire. The person who went in search of that sparkling, small sparkling light, he found it's a jewel there. So both get attracted, but the interpretation will be different and they land up in different places. If a person is genuinely seeking mukti, he will genuinely land up with the Sadguru sooner or later, even if you come across many people who are not genuine. But that's not the case of the people who are not seeking genuine. Those who are attracted by superficial will get stuck with the superficial. A genuine sadhaka is not stuck by superficial. He is looking for an enlightened wisdom, not magic or miracle, not the beard or not the dress or not the color. That's the law of nature. Any questions? हिरण्मयेन पात्रेण सत्यस्यापि हितं मुखं तत्त्वं पूषन्न प्रावृण्णु सत्यधर्माय दृष्टये. Now there is a prayer for mukti, liberation. Hiranmayena patrena. The truth is covered with the Hiranmaya, means golden vessel. The truth is covered with the golden vessel. Please remove that golden vessel so that I can see the truth. O Pushan means sun, O sun. So that I can realize Satya Dharma, the real, the path, Satya means eternal truth, the path of eternal truth. May I realize that. Actually, our problem in life, mukti or liberation, is self-evident. Nothing is required because your nature is mukti. Your nature is Atma. It doesn't require any explanation or anything. But it's covered by ignorance. The world, what you see, what you perceive, is also the self, Brahman, supreme reality. The world is also covered with variety of forms, names and forms. There is an inner covering and there is an outer covering. Atma gets covered by avidya. The Brahman gets covered by Maya. The Maya is names and forms. The supreme reality is within and without. But our mind will never settle on the supreme reality because it's attracted by the form, attracted by the name. We get attracted by the superficial. This superficial is called a golden vessel. The golden vessel is covering the truth. The example is sun here. The sun is the brightest object in the universe. Sun is the shining disk. Sun is the golden vessel. Sun is an object. I cannot look at the reality beyond the sun. The reality beyond the sun is nothing but Surya Narayana. Supreme reality itself is manifesting as sun. But the brightness of the sun, the disk of the sun, is not allowing me to see what is beyond. Please remove this name and forms. Please remove this coloring so that I can see the eternal truth. In the outer world, the eternal truth means going beyond name and form. It is not, doesn't mean that removing everything, name and form, something blank is there. The mind not conceptualizing. A mind which is not conceptualizing is going beyond name and form. So the moment I say go beyond name and form, suddenly we think that everything has to be erased, removed. No. The mind which has to go beyond name and form is the mind which goes beyond the concepts when you are looking at the world. A mind which is non-judgmental, a mind which is not labeling, that is the mind which sees the truth beyond name and form, beyond the golden vessel of name and form. That's why it is said, enlightenment is seeing when you are seeing, hearing when you are hearing, talking when you are talking, walking when you are walking. It doesn't happen. When you see, the seeing, there is interference in the seeing. Who interferes in the seeing? The mind interferes in the seeing. When you are talking or when you are listening, the mind interferes in talking and listening. What does it do? The mind has a habit of labeling everything good and bad. Mind has only baskets, good and bad, the positive and negative. So the world is compartmentalized by the mind. The reality is one whole. Are you able to look at the world in a non-judgmental way? Then you are seeing through that golden vessel which is covering. Are you able to know yourself as not as the body, mind or intellect? In other words, if you are able to drop the concept of what you are and live your life, if you are able to drop the concept of world and live in the world and interact meaningfully in the world, doesn't mean that you become a useless fellow who can't fit into the world. That's called mukti, liberation. A mind which is not conceptualizing, not superimposing the concepts, the name and form on the world or on the self, that is what is a liberated mind. That's what a mind which is free. That mind is nothing but the self, Atma. So please remove this coloring, the golden disc which is actually superimposition on the reality, which blinds. The moment you remove that golden disc, then the truth shines by itself. Truth doesn't require explanation. The sun gets covered by cloud. When the cloud moves, sun shines by itself. There is no shining required. The moment the covering goes, the moment avidya goes, the moment ignorance goes, the truth shines by itself. So Atma Jnana is not getting something, Atma Jnana is dropping the ignorance. This is the prayer. Please remove that ignorance. Pushanne karshe Yamasuriya Prajapatya Vyuha Rashmin Samuha Tejo Yatte Rupam Kalyanatamam Tatte Pashyami Yosavasau Purushah Sohamasmi Sohamasmi Sohamasmi. Again the prayer is to the sun, Pushan. Okay, earlier they worship with the form. There were different forms were being worshipped. Sun is the form for worshipping. Like today we have a temple where form of Narayana, Lakshmi is there. Natural forms like sun, the fire were worshipped in earlier days. Sun is the form through which you worship the consciousness called Narayana, Surya Narayana, through sun. Fire is the form through which you worship the higher consciousness called Brahman. These objects were not chosen randomly. The objects which for worship were chosen because sun is the source of light, source of energy, source of our life. Sun is the most brightest object, and sun is the closest which you can think of the most all-powerful, almighty. So looking at sun, because people have to walk around, people have to work in the field, the sun always reminded them of the divinity. Understand? It's a very natural. So the two things which you see, ultimately human beings require some means, some methodology by which, or something to hold on for purifying the mind. Our ancestors or rishis chose natural things. One is they chose fire and they chose sun. Fire is inside the house, sun is outside. Earlier days there was no electricity, so cooking there is a fire, there is a worship, there is a fire. So fire becomes, and you have to keep the fire alive because there is no matchboxes. So the fire has to be there 24 hours within the house. So 24 hours the fire they associate with the symbol of divinity. 24 hours there is a constant awareness of divinity inside the house. When they go outside, of course there are no corporates, no concrete jungles. Okay, there are real jungles but no concrete jungles. There are no air conditioned rooms. They have to work in the field. The sun always shines morning to evening. So throughout the day they are able to retain the awareness of the divinity, God, inside the house in the form of fire and outside in the form of sun. And both are very natural shining objects, powerful objects. The fire represents burning of the ignorance. Sun represents the source of energy, source of wisdom. So like that, 24 hours a day, they were able to retain the awareness of divinity. Very simple, natural process. Okay. So that sun they are praying, O Pushan, Ekarshihi, you are all alone. The sun is all alone, the most brightest object on the in the sky. But this here, when you are speaking about sun, we are not speaking about the sun as an object. We are speaking about the sun, the consciousness which created the object. We are not speaking just about Surya, sun. We are speaking about Surya Narayana, the one who gave birth to the sun. That's why in Sanskrit there are many names for sun. Aditya. Aditya means is one name for sun, which means the one who was there before the sun. That's Narayana, consciousness. So you are all alone. The consciousness is all alone. The consciousness is the alone, one reality which is all alone. There is no duality there. There is no two consciousness. Ekarshe Yama Surya, you are the Yama means ruler. The whole world is ruled by you. The sun rules the earth. The sun rules our daily routine. Okay, who rules the sun? He rules the entire world. All the laws are his creation. We are speaking of sun as a means, but in reality we are speaking of the Surya Narayan, the consciousness behind sun. You are the sole reality. Yama means one who is the ruler. Surya, one who is giving wisdom. Prajapati, one who is creating the progeny. Because of the sun, there are children, there are people who are born, the living beings are born. Prajapati means Brahma. So real Prajapati is the consciousness from which all these things are born. You are Rashmin. There's the light which is surrounding you is covering. I know sun is an object. I want to be aware of the consciousness which is beyond sun. I am worshipping the sun, I am worshipping the reality through sun. Please free me from this glaring light so that I can see that reality. From Surya, I realize Surya Narayana who is beyond this light. From the manifest physical light, I want to see the light of consciousness which is everywhere. Yatte Rupam Kalyanatamam, that form of you, that consciousness which is most auspicious, that I will see. What is most auspicious? Why something becomes auspicious? Inauspiciousness is to see the separation. When you see the separation, there is a pain. Where there is separation, there is suffering. Where you see the duality, there is fear. If you are able to go beyond the duality and realize that non-dual truth, the supreme reality, all suffering drops. Only the most auspicious is called that non-duality. Incidentally, that is called Kalyanatamam, auspiciousness. And our people have a good way of saying marriage, they call us Kalyana. So marriage is a way of seeing beyond duality. Okay? The masculine and feminine are the duality. The marriage, in the marriage is the process by which you are able to go beyond the masculine and feminine duality. That's why marriage is also considered as a part of one of the purification processes in Sanatana Dharma. The one who is and that sun, the one who gave birth to the sun, one who is shining through the sun, that Purusha, and one who is shining through my body, mind complex, is the same one. I am that reality. I am that Purusha. One in sun and one in this body, they are one and the same. The duality disappears, non-duality dawns. So this is the prayer. Sorry? Soham Asmi. I am that. It's already 8:05. Another 5 minutes, I suppose. Vayur Anilam Amratam Athedam Basmantam Shariram Om Kratosmara Kratam Smara Kratosmara Kratam Smara. So you see the sequence. First there is a prayer to remove the ignorance in the form of golden disc. Then remove the glaring light so that you realize the Brahman and Atman. And realization of Brahman and Atman takes place in the form of I am that reality. That and this. Aham and Etad, they are one and the same. So that dawn happens. First there is a prayer for mukti, liberation. Then there is a realization that I am that reality. Okay, now post-realization. After realization, this body mind complex becomes irrelevant. After you reach the destination, the vehicle is no longer required. You go to a temple, park the vehicle and walk inside. After the realization, the body mind complex, there is no more importance for that. Before realization, body mind complex is required because that is the one which is leading to mukti. Without a body mind complex, there is no liberation possible. Now that has become not so important. That doesn't mean that you will drop. So now the post realization, I am that reality. There is a prayer. Vayu Anilam Basmante Sharire. when this body is, when there's a death, right? This body and mind is offered to the 5 elements. Bhasmantam. It's burnt. It's offered to the fire, then it's offered to the wind. When it's say fire and wind, it's all Panchabhutas. It's offered to Panchabhutas. Oh Lord, make sure that my mind remembers that realization. Let it continue till death. It doesn't mean, it is not that I realize something, I realize that I am Brahman, I am that one reality, and after some time I forgot it. No. Let this realization, Kratosmara, Kratam Smara. Oh my mind, remember this. Never forget this reality. Don't drag me into the world of duality again. When the body is being offered to the flames, that means at the time of death, please make sure that the mind is still pure. Mind doesn't get back into the world of duality, world of ignorance. Krato smara, kratam smara. Oh Lord, you also make sure that this mind doesn't revert. The mind doesn't take the wrong way. The realization that I am one with the reality, Soham Asmi, this reality, let it is retained even at the time of death and when the body is confined to the flames. See, what happens is the last minutes of our life, when the death happens, the last thoughts, the vasanas, impressions will ooze out. Okay? So those impressions will take the form for the next life. So he is saying, let this realization erase all deep-rooted impressions so that I am, even at the time of death, I don't fall back in my realization. So he is praying to the Lord, please protect me. Make sure that these vasanas disappear so that realization is full and complete.
Is that prayer added like a dessert? Like after a meal you have a dessert? After a meal you have a dessert?
Dessert.
But there's no, once you realize it's over.
See, the thing is, that's all. Once you realize it's over, is a word, right? I have to distinguish between the peak experiences and realization. There are a lot of peak experiences in life. They appear to be the final realization. They help you to purify the mind, but they may not be the final. Once the real realization happens, then you will be final. Okay. So till that point of time, mind can still revert back.
Guruji, whenever you use the word purification of mind, also, are you also saying that equals to emptiness?
See, this emptiness is a word, right? We have heard empty mind or no mind. Okay? Huh? Okay. The question is purification of the mind, is it emptiness of the mind? Okay? That is the question, right? So they are different. They are not same. You can create an emptiness of the mind by simple practices. You can, there's a pranayama like Bastrika or Kapalabhati. By doing vigorous pranayama, within few minutes the mind becomes empty. There will be no thoughts. But within a few seconds it will start filling up. The mind can be emptied easily and this empty mind will get filled up easily. The purification is not emptiness. Okay? There are many Buddhist literature. There is a word called emptiness is very often used. I am not speaking of that emptiness. That is the emptiness different. That's emptiness is the inherent nature of things. That's what they say. Now here when I say emptiness, it's a simple word called emptiness. Mind becoming empty can be achieved through yogic practices. But that will get filled up. A purification of the mind has a vasanas, impressions. Okay? So the major impressions are, it can be any impression. It can be I want to do this, I want to do that, that's a vasana. Or I am a body is a big vasana, I am a mind, big vasana. The purification of the mind is I am the body, vasana goes. Okay? So that disappearance at Vasana is called purification of mind. They are different. Now it doesn't revert, it's not a practice. Emptiness is a practice. Purification is not a practice. Purification is a surgery. Dhyana moolam guror murti puja moolam guror padam mantra moolam guror vakyam moksha moolam guru krapa. Day to day how do I achieve that purification? You have to constantly think of the enlightened state of the realized master. That is the way, that is the path, that is the destination. There is no other way. Agnenaya supataraye tasma vishwani deva vayanani vidvan yuyodhya asmajju purana meno bhuishtam te nama uktim videma. He is covering all the gaps, making sure that his liberation is full from. No gap, escape route is there. At the time of death, please make sure that my mind is pure and I am aware of the reality. That's one way. Now he is praying to the fire. Fire is again the symbol of worship. Earlier the prayer was for sun, now the prayer is for fire. Fire is at home, the sun is outside. Right? Fire is used for yatna, fire is used for worship, fire is used for cooking, and the same fire, please understand, every day what you worship, in the earlier days, the worship used to do Agnihotra. And the fire from Agnihotra is taken to light the fire, burn the body. So the concept of divinity is not leaving you anywhere. Even at the time of death, that fire is carried. So this is the way which you can constantly remember the divine. So, oh fire, please take me on the right path of right karma. So this can be for two people. One is person who is not realized, and for a person who is realized. When he is praying to fire, when he is doing worship through fire, he is saying, show me, Agni is the symbol of karma. Show me the right path of karma. Okay. Then Agnenaya Supataraye, please take me on the right path. So there is a two state of realization, two types of realization. One is a person who has fully realized he is the self. So Hamasmi, in this world he is attained Sadhyo Mukti, means final liberation by the body-mind complex. He is liberated fully when he is alive. There is a case, another person who has put a lot of effort, he has done a lot of sadhana, and he has peak experience. That's what I said. Peak experience, I am one with that. But not full realization. That's so-called God realization. It's not complete realization, but there is still a sense of duality, still a sense of a trace of vasana which is possible. Okay. So that person is not attained mukti or liberation when he is alive. He is praying to the fire god Agni, please take me after death to higher and higher worlds where I don't come back, I live in that world and attain liberation. There are two types of mukti spoken in the Upanishads. One is called Sadhyo Mukti or Jivan Mukti, when he is alive, full liberation or enlightenment. And other is called Krama Mukti. A person who has peak experience, who has divine experience, who has divinity, divine experience of life, he has a possibility that, because ignorance is not gone fully. So then what happens is after death, he goes beyond Sargaloka. Sargaloka is a path of return. Beyond Sargaloka and attains Brahmaloka or the Loka of the higher consciousness, which is not full liberation, but he will not revert back to the earth, but stays there and until the Brahma's lifetime is over, and then he attains liberation. This is the concept. These two muktis are, this is actually called krama mukti, gradual liberation. So he is making sure that if he is not realized fully, please make sure that my krama mukti is over. So he is covering all the legal clauses of mukti, liberation. Is it true means what?
Is it true that the person realizes many at the time of death only he realizes and leaves the body?
No, question is not clear.
Most of the Krishnas are yogis, whatever I heard in one of the lectures. At the time of death, they are completely realizing everything.
No, that's not true. So the question is,
Because the requirement of the body dies at that
no, the question is, most of the yogis, many of them only at the time of death, they realize, is the question, right? So no, that's not true. The liberation is Jivan Mukti. When you are fully alive, healthy, then realization happens. Very clear, the clarity, the mind becomes free, mind becomes no mind. That is called Mukti. Now, for every being, at the time of death, there is a possibility, there is a gap for liberation. A door opens. What happens at the time of death is, there is a body which you are dropping. You are becoming free from the body. Okay? You are not taken another body. So you experience momentarily a state of not being a body. Okay? But a person who has lived in ignorance that I am the body, this moment is not available. It will disappear. The moment he leaves the body, another body will capture. So that moment is very temporary. Okay? You cannot catch that moment. The being no body, no body to some body. So the gap is being no body, there is a small gap, very small, minute. So that gap, if you are able to catch, then you are liberated. This is what it says. But it doesn't happen. Okay? Because throughout your life you are addicted to the body. How can you catch that moment which is not a body? So that's why what in Tibet, there is a practice that's called bardos. Bardos means gap between two moments, between death and another body. So what happens is somebody is in deathbed. There's a master who comes and sits at the deathbed and tells him, guides him. Okay, now you are coming to a stage where no body is available. Be careful and catch that, and then you can become liberated. So he guides him through that. Okay, but this guidance doesn't happen at the time of death. Throughout their life they practice it. At the time of death, if this person has not realized, the master will guide him. Okay, now try that. Okay, that's called liberation. So now the question is mukti, state of mukti is available to somebody at the time of death? Yes, it is available. But people can't catch it because now their life is not prepared for that. Okay? So then the question is, some yogi realized at the time of death is not true. If he has not realized at the time of living, how can he realize at the time of death? It's clear? So that's why there's a concept of Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti.
Once he realizes, he drops the body. When the requirement of the body drops.
No, there's nobody who drops the body. Okay? The body will continue because of prarabdha karma. When the prarabdha karma is exhausted, the body drops. There's nobody who drops the body. Somebody who wears the body is gone. Yes.
Vasana is simply desire. Vasana is simply desire.
Vasana is the tendency. The tendency manifests as desire. Desire is manifestation. Vasana is the tendency. Before this. Okay. Any questions? लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम You have to excuse me, I have to take a office telephone call. I have to rush.